For years, there's been a question sitting underneath every XRP conversation that nobody fully answered. Not whether XRP was going to the moon, not whether the banks were getting in, not whether the Clarity Act was going to pass. The question was simpler than all of that. And more important, what is XRP? Not what it does, not what it could become. What category does it belong to in the eyes of the people who write the rules that determine what institutions can hold, what products can be built around it, and what kind of money can flow into it? Because here's what most people don't realize. When Ripple won the SEC case and XRP was declared not a security, that was a massive win. We celebrated that because that was years of fighting and it mattered enormously. But not guilty is not the same as having an identity. If someone accuses you of a crime and you're found not guilty, the world now knows what you are not, but they still do not know who you are. And in the financial world, that is everything, because institutions do not just need to know what something is not. They need to know what it is. They need a legal category, a regulatory home, a clear answer they can take to their compliance department and their legal team and their board. Well, that answer has just arrived officially from the SEC themselves. XRP has been explicitly named as a digital commodity, not implied, not inferred, not left to interpretation, but named directly. And most people in this space is missing what this means. By the way, I'm Camila Stevenson, and around here, we talk wealth. And listen, I'm going to get into this because I want you to understand what just happened. Now, before we get started, I do want to say nothing in this video is financial advice. I am an educator sharing research and perspective. Always do your own due diligence. And if you appreciate conversations that go this deep, then take a second and hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who need this information. And you do not want to miss what's coming next, because this is just the beginning of what we are going to break down today. Now, let's get into it. Let me take you back to something that happened a few years ago that most people in this space celebrated, and rightfully so. So Ripple went to war with the SEC and they won. The SEC accused XRP of being an unregistered security, meaning they were saying Ripple sold something to the public that should have been regulated the way stocks are regulated. And if that accusation had stuck, the implications would have been devastating. But here's what most people also forgot. The implications did not wait for the verdict. The moment SEC filed that lawsuit in December 2020, before a single hearing, before a single piece of evidence was presented, most major exchanges did not wait to see how it played out. Coinbase delisted XRP immediately. Kraken suspended XRP trading for U.S. customers. Binance U.S. suspended it. Several other platforms also followed along. XRP was not guilty of anything. It was accused, and the accusation alone was enough for exchanges to pull them off the platform overnight. So millions of holders woke up one morning and could not trade the asset that they had been building a position in. And that's because the legal category was unclear enough that the risk of keeping it listed just felt too high. Can you imagine what the holders of XRP felt like during that time? I do want to include that Uphold did keep XRP listed through the entire period. And that was one of the reasons why I was still able to accumulate XRP during that time. Now, eventually, Judge Annalisa Torres ruled that XRP is not a security. So exchanges relisted it. The community celebrated, of course. The SEC dropped the case entirely, essentially admitting that they were wrong. And that celebration was completely deserved. I mean, I remember it. I was excited that day. But here's what most people didn't notice in the aftermath of that. The ruling told everyone what XRP was not, but it did not tell anyone what XRP was, right? And that's why you'll notice that there were a lot of people saying XRP is not a security, all right? And so in the financial world, those two things of what it is and what it is not are different. What XRP was an answer that was still missing after the case was won. So we saw the exchanges come back, but certain institutions remained very cautious. Certain products still could not be built, and certain capital was still sitting on the sidelines because the legal identity question, what is XRP, had never been officially answered until now. So the SEC, again, they named XRP as a digital commodity. And that word commodity changes everything about what is now possible. And that is what we're going to talk about next. So let me break down what commodity actually means, because this word gets used very constantly and most people have never heard of it explained in a way that connects it to why it matters for XRP specifically. Now, a commodity is a naturally occurring or produced resource that exits independently of any single company or controlling entity. It is not owned by anyone. It is not issued by a corporation that can decide to change the rules. It just exists. And anyone, anywhere can hold it, trade it, or build products around it. Gold is a commodity. Oil is a commodity. Wheat is a commodity. And natural gas is a commodity. Now, think about what all of those things have in common. Nobody owns gold. A mining company can dig it out of the ground, but they do not own gold itself. The US government cannot decide tomorrow that gold belongs to them and nobody else can hold it. It exists as a neutral resource in the world. That neutrality is exactly what makes it valuable as a store of wealth and as collateral in financial systems. And here's the key thing about commodities in the financial world. They are regulated by the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, not the SEC. And that is a big difference. The SEC regulates securities like stocks and bonds, things that represent ownership in a company or a claim on future profits. When you buy a security, you are buying into a company's story. You are betting on management decisions and earnings and business performance. But the CFTC regulates commodities, resources that exist again independently, things whose value come from utility and scarcity, not from a company's performance. When you hold a commodity, you're holding something that has intrinsic value outside of any single entity's decisions. So when the SEC declared XRP a digital commodity and placed it under CFTC jurisdiction, they were saying XRP is more like gold than it is like a stock. It exists independently. Its value comes from utility and scarcity and network adoption, not from Ripple's quarterly earnings. And I know a lot of people think that because they're always connecting Ripple's movements to XRP. Now, here's why that specific classification unlocks things that were not possible before. Think about what institutional investors can do with gold. They can hold it in retirement accounts. They can use it as collateral for loans. They can build ETFs around it. They can put it on corporate balance sheets as a treasury asset. They can create structured financial products around it. All of that is possible because gold has a clear commodity classification with a clear regulatory framework that institutions can operate within. XRP now has that same framework. Before this ruling, an institution looking at XRP had to navigate ambiguity. Is this a security? Could holding it create regulatory liability? Can we put this in a retirement account? Can we build an ETF around it? Those questions did not have clean answers. And in institutional finance, ambiguity is the enemy of capital allocation. Institutions do not move billions of dollars into ambiguous situations. Now the ambiguity is gone. XRP is a digital commodity with CFTC jurisdiction, clear regulatory home, and now every legal team at every major institution can now have a very different conversation about what is possible with XRP that they could not have 6 months ago. And here is something else that most people are not connecting to this. The commodity classification means that as the XRP network becomes more sufficiently decentralized, the case for its commodity status gets stronger, not weaker. This is not a static determination that could easily be reversed on a technicality. It is a classification built on the actual characteristics of the network, decentralized, neutral, not controlled by any single entity. Those characteristics are becoming more true over time and not less. Now I want to address something that a lot of people are asking right now. If XRP already has the commodity determination from SEC, why does the Clarity Act still matter? Why are we still watching the Senate? And why does legislation still feel urgent? Well, that's exactly what I want to talk about. And I want to answer that. And it may surprise people. So the question of, is the legislation even necessary anymore? And did this ruling make it redundant? Well, let me just answer it like this. A regulatory interpretation and a law are not the same thing. They're not even close. So let me show you what I mean by this. Think about a company that has an internal policy saying employees can work from home. That policy exists. It is real. And people are operating under it. So life is good. But that policy was created by the current CEO, and the current CEO can change it, or the next CEO can come along and reverse it entirely on their first day because it is a policy, not a law. So it lives inside the discretion of whoever is in charge at any given moment. Now, imagine the same work from home arrangement gets written into an employment contract, signed, legally binding. Now it cannot be reversed because someone new shows up and has a different opinion. It requires a legal process to change, and it has protection that the internal policy never had. That's exactly the difference between what the SEC just released and what the Clarity Act will do. The SEC's commodity determination is real and significant, but it was issued by the administration under this SEC leadership. A different administration could come in, a different SEC chair could be appointed, and without legislation backing it up, that interpretation is vulnerable to being revisited, challenged, or reversed. I will say that this may be more harmful to the other cryptocurrencies because XRP did go through a legal clearance. Okay. But we have seen this type of scenario play out before. The crypto industry spent years dealing with the consequences of regulatory whiplash. One administration created a framework, then the next one tore it down, and people built rules that disappeared when the political wind changed. So the Clarity Act is the employment contract. It takes this commodity determination and writes it into the law. It makes XRP and the other cryptocurrencies classification durable, permanent, protected from the next Gary Gensler who decides to look at things differently. And here's the part that should actually give you a little bit of confidence about where things are headed. The SEC did not write this commodity interpretation in isolation. They wrote it specifically in alignment with the framework the Clarity Act is establishing. So that's not an accident. That is coordination. The SEC is essentially saying, here is our current position based on existing law. And here's how we see that position holding under the legislation that is coming. They built the interpretation to survive the law, not conflict with it. Now, add everything else that's happening. The Clarity Act passed the House, 294, I believe, to 134, and that's not a close vote. That's a mandate. Brad Garlinghouse has put the probability of Senate passage at 90%. The White House has sent what he described as an extremely pointed message to anyone dragging their feet. States like Missouri and Arizona are already moving to recognize XRP as a digital reserve asset at the state level. And you also see the institutional money is not waiting for the law to pass before positioning. $1.25 billion have flowed into XRP's ETFs this year alone while the price was dropping. And then BNY Mellon and Fidelity and Franklin Templeton, these are not speculative retail investors. These are institutions that have legal teams and compliance departments, and they've looked at this landscape and decided the risk of waiting was greater than the risk of positioning now. And here's the mindset piece that I want to leave you with. Most people are still waiting for the moment when everything is certain before they decide what they're going to do. They want the Clarity Act maybe signed. They want the price to confirm it. They want the headlines to tell them it's safe for you to get in now. But that's not how positioning works. And I'm going to keep saying that. It is not how wealth gets built in moments like this. The commodity determination just answered the identity question that has been hanging over XRP for years. The legislation protection is closer than it has ever been, and the institutional infrastructure is being built in real time. And the people who are going to look back at this moment as the most important financial decision of their life are not the ones who waited for certainty. They're the ones who understood what they are clearly seeing in the architecture, and they start to act and position. I'm not saying you got to go all in at one time, but my goodness, you need to participate if you are going to see any results on the other side of this. Now, I do want to say this because we talked about gold being a commodity, and it's been a commodity for thousands of years. And one of the most powerful things sophisticated investors figured out about gold is that holding it inside of a tax advantage structure will dramatically change what it does for your wealth over time. Not just owning it, but owning it in the right place. XRP is now in the same legal category as gold, a digital commodity, and the same logic applies. If you believe XRP is going to appreciate significantly as the regulatory clarity plays out, meaning as institutions move in, as ETFs explain, as the Clarity Act passes, and the legal framework becomes permanent, then where your XRP sits while all of that happens is going to matter as much as whether you hold it at all. Okay. That is why I personally use iTrust Capital. Through iTrust Capital, you can hold XRP alongside gold and silver inside of a Roth IRA, two commodity class assets, one digital, one physical, inside one tax advantage structure where your gains grow completely tax free, not deferred, but free. So when the market reflects everything we just talked about, you're going to be able to keep everything that you have built. And what I want to highlight specifically in the context of today's conversation is their institutional grade custody model. Your assets are not just sitting on a retail exchange hoping that nothing goes wrong, but they are held in a closed loop structure built specifically for serious long-term holders who understand that custody matters just as much as conviction. They also have a treasury account for LLCs and trusts. So if you're building at that entity level, if you're a business owner, then you can set up your structure with them as well. Now, the link is in the description, and there is a $100 funding bonus when you fund your account. And if you want to understand how to hold XRP the same way institutional investors think about holding commodities, then this is exactly the move that aligns with that thinking. And also, I do want to mention that I have watched enough people go through moments like this to know that understanding the news and knowing what to do with it are two totally different things. Most people will watch this video. They will understand that XRP has been named a digital commodity. They will feel the significance of it. And then they will close the app and go back to checking the price every morning without a plan. And that gap between understanding something and building a strategy around it is the most expensive gap in investing. So inside my coaching community, we take news like this and we connect it directly to your personal strategy. What does this ruling mean for your specific position? How should you be thinking about your stack size in light of this regulatory clarity? What structure should your holdings be in as the Clarity Act moves towards passage? And how do you hold through the noise between now and when the market fully prices this in? These are not generic questions. They are specific to your situation. And that specificity is what my one-on-one clarity calls are designed for. So you can come with your situation and we build something very real around it. Both the community and the clarity call links are in the description. If this moment feels like the right time to stop watching and start building, then that's exactly the work that we're going to do together. Now, if this video did help you to understand this moment differently, go ahead and give it a like, or if it just added any value to you, give it a like. It does help my channel and it helps to reach more people. And subscribe if you have not already, because we're breaking down things like this all the time. There's new developments happening every single week. And I'll be back on to share more about the things that are coming ahead. Also, share this video with someone in your circle who holds XRP but don't fully understand why this news is so different from everything that has come before it. I believe that it is such an exciting time to be alive. And as always, I want you to stay wise, stay wealthy, and I'll see you in the next video.